The title of this video might seem confusing to some. Quoting the infamous Bill Clinton, it depends upon what the meaning of the word is. When I refer to the is, I refer to basic facts of existence that are evident upon you existing. So, for example, you were born from a mother and father, you are an animal that requires food to live, you were born either a boy or a girl, and you have 5 senses, and so on. These are simple facts of life, and there are many of them. I'll be going over some of the important ones and their implications. One of the big facts, and certainly the fact that defines most of human life and activity, as well as has fueled philosophy for millennia, is the reality that you are born a mortal being. Nobody gets to live forever, and at some point people expire. This is the fact many of the Stoics focus on, how to conduct oneself in life to cope with the limited nature of it. I've talked about this before, Socrates talks about it at length, and a later thinker, Seneca, expands on those thoughts. Besides that, there are many proverbs within the Confucius, Taoist, and Buddhist traditions that address this reality and give advice on how to live with death. Sadly, because our society has extrapolated its virtues so far from tradition, the majority of people alive now do not think about the fact that they are mortal, and live with the pettiness, obsession, and wastefulness of an immortal creature. Of course, when death fast approaches in old age, they will scramble to hold it back another day in the vague understanding that their life was spent unfulfilled, and truly, there is no greater tragedy than that. A person who dies young but at the least explored and represented the things they truly cared about is less tragic than an old crone crawling for medicine, having not found anything that gave value to their own life. An additional big fact of existence is that it is without objective meaning. Now, people of faith will certainly contest this being true, but I say it is another fundamental truth that must be overcome for peace. When you are born, you don't receive a briefing, there is no voice or guide or inclination outside of natural impulses to do or think much of anything. The existence of some higher power would be universally regarded if that power, universally, was known to all humans as they were born naturally. Since such a phenomena has never occurred and all indications point to metaphysical models being established as an output of civilization itself, then we have to conclude that, at least given basic observation, there is no greater meaning or purpose in life bestowed by some greater power. Lacking this fundamental moral code, objective, or guidance leads people down many winding pathways and often into panic. But this panic is a human invention, not one of the animal mind, but of the conscious mind. It is only the discomfort of the thinking being that finds issue with a lack of objective meaning. You will meet many, many people in life who have never considered it, never will, and will never need to, because they don't devote any introspective energy to the question. They are content absorbing and regurgitating the stimuli around them, and that is enough meaning in itself. But for the thinking man, this crisis of meaning is immense. People refer to it as the nihilistic crisis, but instead of trying to probe every corner of human thought for a clean answer, which is folly, one should simply accept the fact as is. There is no inherent meaning or objective to life and existence, but this is in a way freeing, as it allows you within the constraints of a mortal life to pursue any meaning or goal you'd like without restriction. This is also a hard thing to decide, however it is much easier than the impossible task of finding an objective baked into reality itself. Additionally, this does not mean there is no such thing as rational action because of a lack of meaning. Rational action can be taken from any variety of ethical standpoints, from biological to utilitarian, and still provide much needed clarity and decision-making in a world without inherent meaning. Like a sandbox video game, just because there is no inherent objective on the screen doesn't mean you aren't acting rationally within the confines of the world and your capabilities within it. And of course, on this topic of meaning, many will complain that putting forward such thoughts will lead to a civilization that is brutish, hedonistic, cruel, and insane. And while this is true for sure in the observed reality of our now morally free modernity, the result does not change reality, nor does it preclude or make impossible improvements to live in a more virtuous and moral society, despite a lack of perceived inherent moral guidance. A society that through norms had a very harsh system of rules for governing oneself peacefully in civilization, for example, the physical removal of any violent offender from the society entirely, would at least be a start to a more reasonable civilization and society without needing an inherent moral guideline. Besides these points, there are many is statements that can be discussed. One of particular political salience in our clownish world is that of gender identity. The delusion that a person can change the biological reality that they were given at birth is just that, a delusion. Cosmetic maiming of the genitalia in combination with chemical input does not change the reality of a person's gender, only their appearance. It is a society gone mad in which the basic realities a person can observe from birth are shunted and denied as important. That leads to people engaging in the self-destructive behavior in trying to alter this fundamental reality. A trans person can no more be the alternative gender than I can turn into a Tyrannosaurus Rex or cast magical spells. It is simply not an aspect of reality. One should accept their body that they are born with and not further harm themselves and others with such a silly delusion. When an animal is born, they do not seek to change their purpose or their gender or their genetic code, they simply exist. It is only the conscious mind that can lead to such insanity, and thus the conscious mind should lead it away, back to the comforting arms of accepting reality as is. One will be surprised with the peace one gains when they accept these various statements as being hard and true. Not only does one no longer seek endless impossible tasks, they also discard frivolous activities among those that are trying to change reality beyond their mortal control. A smaller is statement I want to touch on, which encompasses some of the earlier ones, is the fact that death is an unknown. The conscious experience, if any, that occurs after death can either be vastly superior to our current existence or vastly worse. Either way, the fact that it is purely unknown should give you a large measure of comfort to continue living in the known of the life, no matter how terrible it becomes. A life must truly be one of immaculate torture to consider the risk of death given all of its implications. Taking these facts together, one may complain, paints a bleak picture of existence. Your life has no inherent objective or meaning. Your life is limited and will expire. You are born human with a set genetic output, and you must consume energy to continue persisting and avoid the unknown of death. But rather than being bleak, I will say that one becomes much more lucid, peaceful, and happy when they accept these facts. It is only the facsimiles of recent society, so far from the specter of pain and death, that leads people to be so insulated from these facts to consider them scary or insane. They are simply facts. The confusion people feel in the modern day is often from the conflict of a value posited by our insane society and these simple observable facts. When the conflict occurs, a person will often feel uncomfortable at some aspect of human behavior but be unable to pinpoint it because these facts were hidden from them or de-emphasized. One feels uncomfortable footing the medical bills for the increasingly decrepit at death's door, because fundamentally everyone dies anyways, and this extra ganted time is not going to be used usefully. Despite the emotional baggage the state tries to attach to this phenomena, it is childish folly to waste so much in the face of inevitable death. Those that wish to do so should do so on their own dimes and the dimes of children who love them and they have nurtured, not on the hard working of society. One feels uneasy at those people passionately calling for the execution and oppression of groups they don't like as insane, because they are agitating for the arbitration of life and death with no inherent moral basis, and often in a very selfish or deranged, tyrannical manner. One becomes queasy thinking about people modifying their bodies with bits of metal, cosmetic surgery, tattoos, and genetic modification because there is no real rationale to not be comfortable in one's natural appearance and faculties. Any justification for these modifications is purely the crazy machinations of a person mired in the conscious thought and not productive or natural in any way. In all, accepting these basic facts among many other basic facts is the first step to being able to overcome suffering. One can distract themselves from it with various methods, but overcoming and finding peace often involves accepting reality and one's state within it. A cosmic humility will bring you a peace of mind. It will also very quickly illustrate the folly of others who lack it. And although it may be lonely living in the more classical style in a far-gone age, it will at least be sane, peaceful, and understandable. And despite the whining of other parties, these realities will never change and have never changed. I have not stated anything strange nor revolutionary nor new. I have simply restated the things that any person born can observe themselves with thought.